California, you may seal your vows with a kiss.
There, and that divorce is not an option for you. Like, that's
No,
never
I
gonna
don't.
happen again.
After the divorce I went through with their dad.
On July 7th, Denise Richards sat alone by the pool as the California sun began to set. But it didn't feel warm, it felt hollow. That morning, her husband of 6 years, Aaron Phypers, had filed for divorce. The headlines spread like wildfire, but the silence in her own home was louder. No public scandal, no explosive fight. Just a quiet ending that had been building for months, hidden behind red carpets, reality shows, and carefully posed smiles. Now, the woman who once declared her marriage never balanced but full of respect was facing a truth no camera ever captured. Sometimes love doesn't end with a bang.
After nearly 7 years of marriage, the Bravo star's hubby filed for divorce, citing
It
the
just quietly disappears. And in Denise's case, it left behind more questions than answers. It was just another summer morning in Los Angeles. The sun was out, the pool shimmered in its usual calm. But for Denise Richards, the silence around her felt different, heavier. She'd woken up to a legal formality that shattered 6 years of promises. On July 7th, 2025, Aaron Phypers filed for divorce in Los Angeles. No warning to the public, no carefully crafted joint statement, no Instagram caption filled with gratitude and mutual respect. Just a quiet filing.
I love being married to my wife. We live dangerously, if you will.
That spoke volumes. And before Denise could even process the news privately, the world already knew. The entertainment machine wasted no time. Denise Richards and Aaron Phypers divorcing after 6 years of marriage, one headline screamed. Others followed within minutes. Tabloids, gossip pages, even fan accounts. Her phone buzzed nonstop with texts, notifications, and press alerts. Everyone wanted a comment. No one asked how she felt. She scrolled through social media, watching herself become content. Photo after photo of her in a wedding dress, laughing with Aaron at Bravo events, hugging her daughters, all now rebranded to fit a different narrative.
No helicopter and no paparazzi? Uh-oh. Time for a job.
So that kind of thought.
In some, they looked like Hollywood's most grounded couple. In others, reality TV's odd match. But none of them showed what Denise felt that day. Exhaustion. A kind of heartbreak that had been slowly building, not erupting. The most painful part? They had just opened their lives to the world again. Earlier that year, Denise Richards and Her Wild Things aired, a show meant to reintroduce the world to the real Denise. Audiences saw her as a mother, a wife, a survivor of past storms. And Aaron was there too, by her side, loving, present. Their connection seemed authentic, but now Denise couldn't help but wonder, was that connection already gone by the time the cameras stopped rolling?
Obtained by E! News. He noted the date of the separation was July 4th and is asking the court to award.
Behind the scenes, things had started to shift. Conversations grew shorter. Nights felt colder. Moments that once made her feel seen now felt routine. But because it was subtle, because there was no screaming match, no scandal, it was easier to pretend everything was fine, easier to keep showing up, easier to smile for the cameras. She remembered sitting for interviews just months ago, praising their relationship, calling Aaron her best friend. She hadn't lied, not then, but something had changed, something quiet and irreversible. Now as her phone buzzed again, Denise turned it face down.
Oh, he's very supportive of anything I do. Thank God. He is so great with that. And
she wasn't ready to speak, not to the press, not even to her friends. She needed to sit with the silence because for the first time in a long time, it finally matched what she felt inside. The world thought this came out of nowhere, but for Denise, it had been coming for a while. And the paperwork was just the final page in a chapter that had already ended in her heart. It was September 2018, and the world watched as Denise Richards walked barefoot down a Malibu bluff, radiating joy beneath a sky streaked with golden light. The ocean whispered in the background. Aaron stood waiting, his expression soft, steady.
Here she comes, down the aisle, to heavy metal music.
This is it.
The kind of man who, at least on that day, seemed to offer her something rare in her whirlwind life: peace. It wasn't just another celebrity wedding. For Denise, it was a declaration. After everything, the headlines, the heartbreak, the public battles with her ex-husband Charlie Sheen, this felt different. Aaron wasn't a Hollywood bad boy. He wasn't chasing fame. He was calm, grounded, even protective. In him, she saw a fresh start. Not flashy, not performative, just real. The ceremony was intimate, spontaneous, and caught even Bravo's production crew off guard. Cameras scrambled to capture the surprise wedding for the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, but Denise didn't seem to care about the optics.
This is the candle to remember Joni. Let's bow our heads in honor of this occasion.
She was in love. The kind of love that made her believe, even after years of public scrutiny, that maybe, just maybe, she could have something normal. Aaron wasn't just marrying Denise. He was stepping into a complex world. A world filled with paparazzi flashbulbs, courtroom drama, and 2 daughters from Denise's previous marriage. All of it magnified under the unforgiving glare of fame. But he didn't flinch. In fact, Denise would later say that's what made her trust him so quickly. He didn't try to change her or fix her life. He embraced it. All of it. And in return, she embraced him fully. She called him her best friend, said they just really enjoyed each other's company.
He was like, whatever, you want to do. I'll support any decision.
It sounded simple, but in Denise's world, simplicity was a luxury. The Malibu ceremony wasn't just about love, it was about rebirth. She wasn't the tabloid fixture anymore. She was a woman reclaiming her narrative, building a new life with someone who seemed to understand the chaos and still chose to stand by her side. But even the most beautiful vows can fade. And as we'd soon learn, the peace Denise found that day didn't last forever. For years, Denise told anyone who asked that her marriage with Aaron wasn't perfect, just honest. It's never balanced, she said during press for Denise Richards and her Wild Things.
Over when we got married, so we were not this swinging couple that people might assume. We weren't.
It is what it is. At the time, it sounded like humility, a grounded admission that no relationship, not even a celebrity one, could be picture perfect. But looking back, those words feel heavier, almost like a quiet cry beneath a polished smile. Balance was never easy for them. Denise had spent her life walking a tightrope between fame and family, privacy, and public chaos. Her career had been loud, her personal life louder. Through it all, Aaron had seemed like a still point in the storm. But what happens when even the anchor starts to drift? Behind the scenes, the demands of everyday life pressed in.
September 8th, 2018, the couple worked on several business endeavors over the years.
There were children to raise. Denise's daughters Lola and Sammy from her tumultuous past with Charlie Sheen, and Eloise, whom she'd adopted in 2011. Then there was the show, the headlines, the constant pressure to keep it all together for an audience that never stopped watching. Aaron tried, he really did. He stepped into the role of stepfather with surprising tenderness. He later adopted Eloise, calling her a sweetheart and saying, "I think of her as my own." It wasn't performative. It wasn't for show. It was genuine. That gesture, so personal, so meaningful, gave Denise hope that they were building something solid.
At his center.
Okay.
Yeah. It'll be revealed later.
Yes. I was a
Something sacred. But love isn't always enough when two people are quietly pulling in different directions. They preached respect. They made space for each other's individuality. But somewhere in that well-meaning space, they stopped checking in. stopped connecting. The stations Denise once swore by, those nights where couples could shut down the world and focus only on each other, became less frequent. Then came the excuses. Then came the silence. What looked like maturity from the outside might have been avoidance from within. They respected each other, yes, but they also avoided the hard truths.
A lot of things and just in a really good place right now and thought it would be, fun. So I thought, why not?
The ones that sit quietly in the space between kind words and unspoken needs. And when the weight of unspoken things grows too heavy, even the strongest foundation can quietly crack. In 2019, just a year after the wedding, Aaron made a move that brought Denise to tears. The kind of tears that don't come from sadness, but from feeling truly seen. He legally adopted her daughter, Eloise. Eloise wasn't his by blood. She was Denise's third daughter, adopted in 2011. A bright light in her life with a rare genetic disorder that required extra care and patience. But to Aaron, none of that mattered.
Little Eloise. There's Eloise.
Today, Denise says Eloise can only say a handful of words.
He didn't hesitate. It wasn't even a decision, he told people. It just is. She's a sweetheart. I think of her as my own. And for Denise, it was everything. That act felt like a promise, not just to her, but to their whole family. He wasn't just playing husband on paper. He was living it. He was choosing them day after day. For a while, the household was steady, calm. They found comfort in routines, family dinners, quiet moments, walks with Eloise. Denise often said that Aaron had a calming energy, something she desperately needed after the chaos of her past. She'd survived headlines with Charlie Sheen, battled the scrutiny of Real Housewives.
See his daughters. It's such a sad contrast to what Denise told us only a few years.
And rebuilt her life from scratch. Aaron was supposed to be the second act, the softer, safer chapter. And for a while, it truly was. But something shifted, slowly, quietly. And the hardest part? There was no clear moment, no defining fracture, just a slow unraveling. Those intimate moments that once came naturally started feeling forced. Where there was once comfort, there was now polite distance. Where there was once laughter, silence lingered longer than it should have. Even the act of parenting, once a shared joy, began to feel like parallel lines instead of intersecting lives.
What's best for them? Every kid's different. For Eloise, we've tried.
They weren't fighting, but they weren't fully connecting either. And Denise knew that sometimes the loudest warning signs are the ones no one hears. Because when the love starts to dim, and you can't point to a single moment when it happened, the grief becomes even harder to explain. By 2024, Denise and Aaron had perfected the art of appearing in sync. Whether it was at red carpet events, casual paparazzi run-ins, or the glossy lens of Denise Richards and her wild things, the couple exuded what looked like harmony. Their chemistry on screen didn't feel forced, but that was the trap. It felt real, even to them. But real life wasn't scripted.
And here we go.
The family most recently appearing together on Denise's
Behind those curated snapshots and carefully edited scenes, something subtle had shifted. It wasn't explosive. There were no screaming matches, no slammed doors, just stillness. And not the kind that brings peace, the kind that echoes with absence. Denise began to feel it first in the small things. The way Aaron stopped asking how her shoots were going. The way their shared dinners grew quieter. The date nights that once sparked laughter and spontaneity turned into muted dinners, where their phones filled the silence. They were still living under the same roof, but emotionally it was as if they occupied two different worlds.
And that their monthly expenses are a whopping $105,000.
And Denise, someone who had survived chaotic love before, knew this kind of quiet was more dangerous. The chaos, at least, shows passion, but silence can mean surrender. She tried to reignite things, suggesting getaways, therapy, even unplugged weekends. But every solution was met with lukewarm effort. Aaron wasn't dismissive, just disconnected. He went along with her plans, but the warmth, the spark, the presence, it wasn't there. And it hadn't been for a while. Even parenting, once a deeply shared experience, started to fracture. Aaron still adored Eloise.
Report from the actress and wants to keep their assets and debt separately, including his power tools, motorcycle.
That part never changed. But he seemed tired, not just physically, but emotionally spent. Like he was moving through motions rather than moments. Denise watched him from across the room one night. Eloise giggling beside him and Aaron offering a tired smile in return. And her heart ached. This wasn't the man she married, or maybe more painfully, this was who he always was. And she just couldn't see it anymore through the lens of who they used to be. The show didn't help. Being on camera created a strange dual reality, one where you're performing closeness, even as it slips through your fingers. They would film a sweet family moment.
You get married, you have to work through stuff, but if it's a boyfriend,
then barely speak once the camera stopped rolling. The crew, respectful as ever, never asked questions, but Denise could feel their eyes. The awareness that what they were capturing was just a version of the truth. There's a grief that comes with losing someone who's still right in front of you. It's a slow burn, the kind that doesn't make headlines but leaves permanent scars. And Denise, for all her strength, knew she couldn't keep pretending. Even if the audience still believed the dream, she was waking up to the reality. And sometimes the hardest breakups aren't the loud, dramatic ones. They're the ones that die quietly, right in the middle of a perfect picture. For Denise Richards, motherhood has always been her anchor.
And to see.
It'll definitely be a huge difference being recognized for myself and not.
Amidst career highs, tabloid chaos, and personal heartbreak, her children have been her North Star, especially Eloise. She adopted Eloise in 2011, long before Aaron Phypers entered her life. The decision had been deeply personal, a choice to give love and stability to a child who needed it. When Aaron came along, he didn't just accept Eloise, he embraced her. In 2019, without hesitation, he formally adopted her. It wasn't even a decision, he told people. She's a sweetheart. I love her. I think of her as my own. That moment, that quiet, beautiful act of commitment.
Going in because of the horror films, I'm not really big on them, but I'm here, so we'll see.
The clearest signs to Denise that this man was different. He didn't need the spotlight. He didn't posture. He just showed up fully. Their bond as a family deepened. Aaron was gentle, hands-on, and often the calm center in Denise's whirlwind of obligations. Whether it was navigating co-parenting with Charlie Sheen or dealing with public scrutiny, Aaron had her back. He played the role of partner, protector, and father, and he seemed to wear all three with grace. But something changed. As the marriage quietly unraveled, Denise couldn't help but wonder what the fallout would mean for her daughters, and especially for Eloise. It was one thing to navigate a separation as partners.
I can have her text.
definitely.
All right, have a great lesson. Eloise,
It was another to untangle the emotional thread of a man who had willingly stepped into the role of dad. Would he remain present? Would he fight to stay connected? Or would his departure from the marriage also signal a quiet withdrawal from the life of the little girl who called him family? These were the questions that haunted Denise the most, more than the headlines, more than the judgment. Because no matter how complex adult relationships become, the ripple effect always lands hardest on the children. And when love is real, when a man said, "She's mine too," that love doesn't vanish with a signature on divorce papers. Or at least, it shouldn't.
Is your sister?
The girls have always been in the shadow of their mom and dad, and this is a wonderful opportunity.
From the outside, Denise and Aaron were everything a post-Hollywood fairy tale promised. She was the actress who had weathered scandal, single motherhood, and public scrutiny with remarkable poise. He was the calm, supportive partner, a holistic healer who seemed to ground her chaotic world. Together, they projected something rare in celebrity circles: sincerity. And the public loved them for it. Whether it was their spontaneous 2018 Malibu wedding, aired for millions to see on The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, or their appearances at wellness retreats, charity events, and family-centered reality TV, they leaned into the image of a mature, grounded couple.
For comment, Denise first met Aaron at his healing center in Malibu and started dating.
But even fairy tales require maintenance. Denise had always spoken candidly about their relationship. She admitted it wasn't always balanced, that with kids, careers, and the legacy of past marriages, perfection was impossible. Still, the vulnerability felt refreshing. She made it seem real, relatable. What no one saw, not even the cameras capturing Denise Richards and her wild things, was how heavy that imbalance eventually became. Because underneath the polished moments were long days filled with missed eye contact, evenings where meaningful conversation was replaced by silence, and weekends that no longer felt like shared time, but tolerated obligation.
Spending habits. Denise Richards' alleged expenses exposed by her estranged husband.
And the hardest part? There was no villain in the story. Aaron hadn't wronged her in any dramatic, headline-making way. There were no explosive arguments, betrayals, or cruel outbursts. Instead, it was the slow erosion of connection, like a house left standing in the sun too long, beautiful from afar, but quietly cracking at the foundation. Denise tried to patch the fractures. She introduced new rituals, pushed for counseling, even restructured her schedule to make room for intimacy. But love isn't always enough when two people are no longer growing in the same direction. Aaron was becoming more inward, more reserved. And Denise,
eating out, another $15,000. And clothing, Aaron claims,
always the fighter, the protectors, started to feel like she was battling for something Aaron had already let go of in his heart. Their marriage became a performance for everyone but them. And as much as Denise hated giving up on something she once believed in so deeply, she also knew sometimes the most honest act of love is letting someone leave, even if you stayed ready to keep trying. There was no press conference, no dramatic social media statement, just a quiet court filing on July 7th, 2025, and a single ripple that would soon turn into waves. Aaron Phypers had filed for divorce. No public feud, no back and forth in the headlines, just
for laundry and cleaning. Damn, that's a lot of quarters at the laundromat.
Papers, ink, and the end of something once deeply intimate. It was the kind of ending that doesn't come with fireworks, but with silence. For Denise Richards, it wasn't a surprise, but that didn't make it any less devastating. She had felt it coming, the slow retreat in his eyes, the increasing distance in their home, the way their conversations began to sound more like polite roommates than passionate partners. It wasn't loud, but it was real and final. What stung the most wasn't the act itself, but how quietly it was done after everything they'd built, everything they'd shared.
Sirius XM, that her husband recorded a lot of her spicy content when he wasn't behind the...
From televised weddings to joint parenting, the final move came not with a discussion, but with a form filed in court. A decision made alone. And yet, even in her hurt, Denise stayed composed. No accusations, no bitterness, just a quiet acceptance that sometimes people outgrow even the most loving relationships. Aaron, the man who once adopted her daughter without question, who stood by her during public storms, had now chosen a different path. And Denise, ever the survivor, was left to process what it meant to start over. Again, this wasn't just the end of a marriage. It was the end of a dream of stability, of lasting partnership, of...
When you make that commitment, I think it is important to work through whatever it is. So, yeah, I don't want to ever go through it again.
Rewriting her love story on her own terms. But Denise Richards had been here before. And if life had taught her anything, it's that even in endings, there's space for a new beginning. Denise Richards has never been a stranger to reinvention. From red carpets to reality shows, public divorces to private triumphs, she's navigated a life many couldn't imagine, and somehow remained standing. This latest chapter with Aaron Phypers was supposed to be her calm after the storm. A marriage built on trust, respect, and deep, genuine connection. And for a while, it was. But love, no matter how real, doesn't guarantee forever. Their separation wasn't explosive.
We tend to sometimes focus on the negative, and I think it's healthier to...
There were no public betrayals or tabloid wars, just a quiet unraveling, the kind that sneaks in when two people stop growing in sync. No villains, just time, change, distance. Now, Denise faces something she knows all too well, starting over. But this time, she's not lost. She's grounded in motherhood and maturity and a sense of self that wasn't always there before. Her daughters remain her center. Her story is still hers to write. And as the headlines shift and the world moves on, one truth remains. Denise Richards has always endured. Not because life was easy, but because she never stopped choosing herself. And maybe that's the real love story. Not the one that ends in vows, but the one that begins the moment you decide you're worth staying for.